Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show, featuring Clay Hall, and also by popular demand, which means me. My middle name is Mr. Popular. By popular demand, Bill Kurelic. Yeah, he's retired from covering recruiting, Ohio State recruiting specifically, since over like what was it, Bill? About 40 years, right? But the bottom line is he's joined us here in our FanStream Sports, FanStreamSports.com Ohio offices, headquarters, to talk what the hell is going on, ladies and gentlemen, in college football in the realm of acquiring players. Bill, welcome to the Tim May Show finally. Actually, you've been on it before, haven't you?
Not the Tim May Show, but a whole lot of other stuff we've done together.
Yes, exactly.
Over the 40 years.
Yeah, we rocked and we rolled over the years, ladies and gentlemen. And it always helps when you have two people calling for somebody instead of one. Bill scratched my back and I scratched his. Clay, did you ever scratch your back?
Many times, no question about that. It was normally the first Wednesday in February, but everything has changed, and Quincy Porter appears to have a new home. So we'll see how that.
We're going to get to that.
That's official later.
Bill, Clay can't get past his this just in mode of being a television dude.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But
bit.
yeah, it was, Clay let the cat out of the bag, or Ohio State let the cat out of the bag. Quincy Porter, who I thought this time a year ago, when we first got to see him, especially in the spring, we got to see him make some spectacular catches. I go, this guy's going to play this year. You could see it coming. And he didn't play anywhere near as much as we thought. Plus, he got banged up. We never knew exactly what his injury was, but he decided to hit the portal like it seems like a third of the Ohio State football team did after this past season. And he has agreed to terms, whatever you call it, to go to Notre Dame. Bill, your first blush take on that.
Well, if you're
we're going to get into how the chaos that's going on right now.
If you're an Ohio State fan, it's almost a good thing, because another school he was looking at was Michigan.
Yeah.
So we had talked about how, just hope he doesn't end up at Michigan from the school. So, Notre Dame is, I guess, not a thrilling choice for Ohio State fans, but it's sure a lot better than school up north.
Yeah,
that's right.
There you go. By the way, I want people to understand, Bill is retired. He retired in November after an auspicious career, hardworking, even got praised at one time by Urban Meyer. Bill Kurelic did, for his work ethic. And this is from a guy who basically never always worked 24/7. I'm talking about Urban Meyer. I think Bill Kurelic worked 24/7. Did it feel like it at times, Bill?
It did as signing day for Greg.
Yeah.
Got closer.
Yeah.
Now, as I've mentioned to you, sooner or later that gets a little bit old.
Yes.
And this summer I decided I wasn't sure when I was going to retire, but it was going to be before the next transfer portal opened up. And here I am talking transfer portal.
Yeah. Well, we got it. We have
You're
some
still
expertise.
in the know.
You're like the those former NFL officials that are in the booth now saying whether or not a call is good or not, right? What the replay is going to show. Yeah. And sometimes they get it wrong, which is pretty interesting. But Bill Kurelic was almost always right. Do you agree with what I just said there? That last statement, Bill Kurelic was almost always right.
Well, let's say he tried to be always right. But, nobody's going to get every one of them right. But I guess in this day and age of the crystal ball, my percentage was high.
Yes. Well, as I like to say, because, I started quoting you in stories at the Dispatch because you just needed – I was making all those calls you were making way back in the mid-'80s when I first started covering Ohio State, because there was no you. There was like Tom Lemming and that guy on the West Coast. What was his name? Alan Wallace. And that was pretty much it. And in terms of anybody who could give you any kind of feel for what this recruit looks like other than what his coach said about him and stuff. And you and I finally hooked up because, you were knocking on the door several times, and I finally answered. And I go, well, I haven't answered this guy's phone calls before. You remember that sequence in our deal? But, yeah, I go so far back as I like to remind people, Tom Lemming used to dictate his top 100 in the country, used to dictate it to me over the phone. Because this was this is pre-internet, or when the internet was in its incredible infancy, pre-internet, pre-cell phone, definitely pre-Twitter /X. And so it moved slowly, but the word eventually moved irrevocably toward signing day. And Bill and I used to talk all the time, and a lot. And I would sometimes make calls for him. I would pick his brain on calls he had made, and because you got to figure a guy didn't want to hear from the same guy 2 times in 3 days or 3 times in 2 days. I'm talking about a recruit or a coach,
3 times in 1 day,
or 3 times in 1 day and stuff. And it was a very interesting time. But what I always said about Bill was I knew his info was coming from actual conversation with either the player, the player's coach, or the player's parents. And that's pretty accurate, isn't it, Bill?
Yeah. And if you remember right, well, of course, there was no internet in those days.
Correct.
So, like you mentioned, you had to call them.
Yep.
Or their coach or their parents, whatever. And in those days, we would try to just decide, Tim, why don't you call that kid this time? Or I'll call him. So we weren't bothering that kid, so to speak, so many times. So we worked it out.
We had a network going before they did. But Bill, real quick, Bill cut his teeth, man. I mean, you probably made as much, if not more money on the 900 number deal is anything in your career, didn't you? For the most part.
I was one of the few people in the world, I think, that hated the invention of the internet.
Yes.
Because it put the 900 number out of business.
Yeah. It's funny how things come and go, and they come and go so fast, right?
Yep. That's what I wanted to ask him about.
Well, go ahead.
Just the trends. Do you think Ohio State, despite signing 28 kids in this class, is now in the process of maybe Kiffin-esque of we got to get proven players? Or will it always be a balance? Or it was always a 20, 25, and we'll get 6 out of the portal because that's all we need. Is that different today?
Yeah, I think those days are probably gone. It's like you said, Clay. They just in the early days of the transfer portal, they picked and chose, and they just if they had a need, they brought in somebody to fill that need.
Yeah.
It's not that way anymore. I mean, we were talking before we went on the air, it's getting to be basketball-esque, where basketball, you're looking at almost a new team every year now.
12 or 13
Yeah,
players.
you're listening. Yeah. It's not that way for football, but it's moving towards that. Ohio State, when you count in the recruits that they sign and the kids are going to bring in the portal, it's going to be over 40 new kids. And, it used to be 85, the 80s in scholarships. Well, you're going to have at least 40 new players in that program.
In your count, you're talking recruits and transfer portal guys. Yeah, that's obviously Ohio State's lost over what is the exact number now? 24, 25. Yeah. Might be more than that to the portal. The interesting aspect of that is they haven't lost a starter. They've lost a couple of guys that could have made their way into starting this coming season. But what the portal is doing for an Ohio State is it's ripping away your depth, or guys you've been developing for a year or 2 or 3. And that's what's really hard to replace. And it could make you as a coach and as a staff become even more jaded about, well, wait a minute, why are we going to, and even as a school administrator going, wait a minute, why are we spending all this money recruiting guys, I'm talking about out of high school, when in fact the portal may show that we can go and get what we need from 1 year to the next, but that's not guaranteed either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the point is, there's got to be a reckoning here eventually from a financial standpoint of doing this thing, because the revenue sharing aspect of things, and we're going to get into this in a minute, but the revenue sharing aspect of things is there is a finite amount of money that you're dealing with from the revenue sharing side of things. The NIL side, that right now is under fire because the CSC, the College Sports Commission, whatever it's called, all these schools agreed to abide by rules, and and throw in that NIL.go, or whatever it's called, the clearinghouse that looks into whether NIL deals are legit and things like that. Now, of course, they feel like they're ready to kind of like bring the hammer down on some schools. But what will that mean? What's going to be the penalty phase if, in fact, schools have promised more than they can provide from an NIL standpoint to these players during this free agent period? And then number two, they also wanted to know not just whether the money is legitimate, but whether the let's, for one of another term, the company you're going to do NIL services for, whether that's legit. You know what I mean? So there's a reckoning coming, but I'm not sure it's coming as fast as we think, only because, so what's the penalty phase?
Yeah, who's going to enforce this?
Yeah, you're going to say these 800 guys can't play because of A, B, C, or D? I don't see that happening. I hit a button there and I didn't mean to. Hope it didn't cut us off.
But not everybody.
Hang on a second. It did cut us off. No, it didn't. All this dashboard here has been kind of messed up since I last played with it. But I wanted to ask you about that, Bill. What do you see just immediately down the road with the CSC threatening action?
It's hard to say at this point. I mean, I just, in the end, I have a hard time seeing who is going to enforce all this.
Correct.
I just, that's just not clear to me at all at this point.
It's almost like a speed trap has been set up, but there's nobody past the speed trap to pull you over and give you a ticket. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's, they may send you one in the mail, but what do you do with that?
And it just, even right, one school interprets things different than another school,
right?
Different than another school. Who's going to be the final arbitrator on all this?
Well, let's get to that. So Mark Pantoni, you've known him as long as I have.
Yep.
And you may know him even better because, you get, whenever you cover recruiting, you got to know who the recruiting coordinator is at a school, for example. And imagine how his job has changed over the last 4 years. It's kind of nuts. I had him on my a Tim May show I did earlier in the summer before I got affiliated with FanStream Sports. And I may play that again here in a couple of weeks, just because it was really good insight into what he's all about now, how he was at one point the player's best buddy, almost in a lot of respects, to now he's part of the revenue sharing, deciding who gets what from the revenue sharing. And I think people out there understand what revenue sharing is. Every school now can share up to like $20.5 million with athletes at their school, just out of the athletic department, large S. And Ohio State has four sports they're dealing with in that respect: football, men's basketball, and women's volleyball. Women's volleyball for some reason, but a lot of people think that's a real growing sport. I would have thought women's softball would have made as much sense, but that's neither here nor there, especially after the women's volleyball team only won like 6 matches this past season. But I digress. Bottom line is football's got about 16.5 million of that, that they have to then decide from the returning roster in January who gets what, the players. And so that's made Mark Pantoni's in the middle of that,
16 million.
Yeah.
It just doesn't go that far.
It doesn't go as far as you want. If you're wanting to keep, Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin and right on down the line, because what we're seeing here, and Clay was touching on it a minute ago, what we're seeing is you're seeing guys deep in the roster being urged maybe by themselves, but it sounds like as much by their agent. Yeah, they can have agents now. Crazy, right, Bill?
They're not,
and or their parents,
which is ridiculous.
And or their parents, if you talk into your microphone.
Yeah.
And by their parents, of wait a minute, there may be more money out there for you somewhere else, plus an opportunity to play quicker, faster. Let's explore that. Just because you get in the portal doesn't mean you're staying in the portal. Yep. Doesn't mean you can't come back. Now, some of them, when they jump in the portal, Ohio State may say, okay, see you later, alligator. Or Fighting Irish.
Agents, there was one player that a high school recruit. He showed up to the school with 6 agents.
Yeah,
and the school said, "We're not doing that. Not 6 agents. That's where it is now. 6 agents when he gets to school and takes his visit, and they start talking about money.
Yeah, you wonder what his deal was is with those agents from a percentage standpoint. And because I've always said, the guys that are really making out in this deal are the agents and the lawyers who are fighting all these different things, and fighting for rights and all that kind of stuff. And the ones who are defending what's going on in college, you know what I mean? They're making a fortune right now. And, but getting back to what you said. So the point is with Mark Pantoni, and he said one of the great things about having Matt Patricia around starting this time a year ago, a little bit later this time a year ago, when they first got into the revenue sharing aspect of things, which started can't remember the date it started last year. Was it February or March? But anyway, Matt Patricia had been a GM in the National Football League, along with being a head coach and, of course, a longtime coordinator, assistant coach. But the GM aspect helped them get their salary cap, help them understand more how to use the salary cap, which is the revenue sharing aspect of things, the $16.5 million that they can dole out to football players. And you got to have those experts on your staff now, right? It's kind of crazy.
Again, it's not what anything close to what the reason I got into all this.
Yes,
it's totally changed, and I am all for the players being compensated. It's just
me too.
It's not the way this has turned out. It is not the way that it was meant to be.
Yeah.
I mean, you weren't meant to buy players coming out of high school.
Right.
And that's what's happening now.
Right.
As one example.
Right. And then as somebody pointed out, there's over 4,000 players, they think, in the portal right now. Mm-hmm. And the way you estimated, like 2,600 openings.
Yep.
Okay. That means
somebody's going to not have a chair.
Somebody's not going to have a chair when the music stops.
And you talk about buying players out of high school, and now you're buying them off of other college rosters.
Yeah. It's a double-edged deal. Yeah. So what I'm getting to you with you is, did you deal much with agents when you were, you just retired in November? Do you remember having to have agents' numbers?
Oh yeah.
I mean, coming out of high school, they can have representation, AKA an agent.
I didn't deal with them that much, but I dealt with them on occasion. And to be honest, and I was covering the transfer portal too.
Oh yeah, no.
So that's where I would talk more to the agents, certainly.
Yeah. So what were the conversations? I mean, what were the conversations like? And were there agents there that you knew were in it for the right reasons, and were there ones that you could tell were not? Yeah. I mean, how did that play out?
And they weren't always called agents,
right? Representatives.
Your trainer or whatever,
counselor. Trainer.
And there were some good ones. I mean,
how could you tell? How could you tell a guy was a good one?
By, they would tell me what they're looking for, and they weren't necessarily. One agent, for instance, said that and this was a agent, trainer, whatever you're going to call him, for a high school kid. He said that when I talk to these high school kids, we don't even talk about money until we're far down the road. He said, we talk about all the other things of where you'd like to be in life, the fit you want for college, all those things. And then when we get past all that, far down the road, we talk about money. And that's somebody that's more in tune, I think, with the best interest of the kid.
Bill, are you hearing, I continue to read now that some schools are not abiding by the 20.5 in revenue share. And they're.
Where are you hearing that, Clay?
Yeah. And
you step outside.
Step outside this certain schools.
Step outside this building, you can hear it.
You heard that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So there's another unenforceable violation.
That's what we're talking about. The CSC, the clearinghouse.
Unbelievable.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it is really. And you used to hear about the Wild Wild West when you were talking about high school kids.
That's what
it's on steroids now.
Yeah,
that's what I think. Yeah. I feel like I'm back in the courtship of Marcus Dupree when the currency was a mobile home.
Yeah,
a couple of cars.
Yeah,
and I'm like, whoa! I'm suddenly 35 years old again.
Yep. And that's for me. That's why it was to be honest. I had thought about retiring for the last several years.
Yeah.
And it got to this point. That's why this kind of became a good time, because, that I don't know. I didn't know that I wanted to deal with that type of stuff all the time.
Well, let me, this is what's interesting though, is this is what Pantone and I were talking about, and we've talked about it with a couple of Ohio State coaches too, is, you see these reports and you rarely ever see any actual solid figures on what a guy is getting and how that figure is put together in terms of like, the Sorsby kid who just agreed to terms with Texas Tech to move from Cincinnati to Texas Tech. You're seeing like a $5 million deal. Okay. What's never delineated in there is that per season, and then what you think it has to be, or at least this coming season. And then what does that mean? Does that include the revenue sharing part of it, which how much did the school pop into that, right? And then how much is NIL deals, which is what the NIL.go clearinghouse or NILgo.com clearinghouse is all about, is how much of those are legit, how much of that money is actually there. And, I mean, the point is, and you see these vague reports by the people who report on it, and I'm not knocking those guys, but he gets the best deal in history, which is what, the last 3 years, but they rarely ever tell you the number. They rarely ever tell you the number and how that number is drawn from. I mean, where's drawing from? There, I finally said it. Where the money's coming from. And I'm just going, it is so vague out there. I know Ohio State had a linebacker prospect last year that they were looking at. It was a big time prospect, and he came in and basically stated, it's going to take this much because this school has already offered me X amount. Well, number one, Ohio State looked at him and said, well, good luck. Good luck in your endeavors. And number two, how do you know if that's even legit or not?
Yep, that's it.
That is the number that's out there. And like you said, you ran into a guy that had 6 agents, 6 or 5 or 6 reps. That's crazy. And my point, I keep going back to this, but how do you corral this? The SCORE Act in Congress has been floating around for a while. It's had all kinds of different changes made to it, et cetera. And the reason that would be important is it would put federal guidelines or law into account of, number one, of everybody having to meet this standard instead of Ohio standard and Texas standard or Tennessee standard or Alabama standards. You understand what I'm saying? It would put the power back into a federal regulations, but then those regulations would require, I think, some basically revelation of what everybody is getting. And I'm not sure everybody wants to go to that route. But then number 3 is, like Bobby Carpenter, and I've talked about before, and he's talked about on his show many times, in the NFL, if I offer you a free agent contract or a free agent contract, this much money for so many years, you have to have that money in escrow if you're an NFL team to prove that you can pay that over those years. In other words, that's just sitting there not doing you any good, except you're going to be paying it to this guy over the years. You have to show proof that money is there. With NIL deals right now, you don't necessarily have to do that. And so that's what I think the SCORE Act would bring into account, but it also probably put a cap on NIL type deals. The revenue sharing thing is already set in stone. It's going to increase every year by a certain amount and stuff, which, but then you also need an accounting of that, because a lot of people think some schools might go over and above what it is their revenue sharing budget or max is. So, Bill, you've covered this for 45 years. How do you get hard and fast rules in that without everybody agreeing to them?
Well, again, I think that's undetermined at this point, and that's one of my concerns. I think,
unless it becomes law. If it becomes law, that's a different deal.
And I watched Nick Saban throw out, I think, some pretty good ideas.
Yeah.
But is anybody listening?
Yeah.
Anybody that's going to make decisions? I don't know.
Well, see, what we get the impression right now is Ohio State is trying to adhere, for the most part, to the CSC guidelines, because Ohio State believes there's a day of reckoning coming.
And they're getting skewered by a lot of people for doing that.
Correct. Which, number one. Number two, they're getting skewered by people who I don't think even understand the system and even know what's really, truly going on. If you follow my drift, Twitter skewers, Twitter X skewers. And a lot of people pay attention to these loudmouths out there and don't really understand what's going on from the standpoint of Ohio State is getting rated for the most part right now, and or they've got curiosity seekers from within their own roster who are looking for maybe there is a better deal out there. I'm told there is. I'm told the oil is gushing over here. Maybe I should go wildcat that oil field and see what's going on. But let's get to this. What I'm getting to. So if you're Mark Pantoni and you're Ryan Day, the two principals really in this thing, what guides you right now?
Well, I think the AD to some extent, well, to a lot of extent, Ross York. And I think, it's not Mark Pantoni's first rodeo.
Right.
I mean, he's as good as it gets in this business. And I think, his judgment guides a lot of what's going on. And it's, in my opinion, his judgment is it's not always correct. Nobody ever is, but it's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
It's as good as it gets to me in the business.
Yeah. But when you talk about maybe, like you said, 40 plus players new on the roster this year, counting high school players, that's a lot of guys just to know their name.
Yep. And you were talking about the kids leaving and all, and that they haven't lost a starter. Well, they've lost some guys that are going to be starters.
They're going to be competing.
They're going to be starters.
Yeah, I couched that with that a little bit.
They're going to be starters at their new school.
Yeah.
And that school's probably going to be willing to pay them a little bit more because they're going to be a starter at their school than Ohio State is, because that's going to be a depth piece.
Now, here's what, when you brought up Nick Saban, I'll never forget COVID 2020, Ohio State played for the national championship, got beat by Alabama. It, cleaned Clemson's clock. I just like clean Clemson's clock, the alliteration there. Cleaned Clemson's clock and then played Alabama and got beat because they lost several starters to COVID, and they lost their number one running back on the first play of the game to a broken collarbone in Trey Sermon around down the line. So they got bushwhacked there at the Miami Gardens where they're playing the national championship this year. My point is Alabama all but hung out a banner, a sign saying, we need a receiver who can take the top off the defense. And a guy who played in that game for Ohio State was named Jameson Williams. Next thing you know,
JMO,
he's in the portal and signs with Alabama. You understand what I'm saying? So, Nick Saban was always against hurry up offenses or spread up, but hurry up offenses until he saw the light and got into it. My point is the problem with college athletics right now is everybody's looking for that one little area where they can make a killing and or improve their team immensely. And not the rules be damned, but the rules aren't really rules if they're not being enforced, right? And that's what we're seeing most of all, right? And it comes down to people kind of we're all in this together. Why are we looking at it from 130 different views, which is what major college football is? And do you see any kind of atmosphere out there where they could all get together and say, yeah, let's all play by the rules? I don't see it, because college football has always been about getting an edge.
That's it.
Yep.
Yeah. And the escalation to me is incredible. Reading last night, Texas is going to have a $40 million roster this time around. And it was just 2.5 years ago. I recall that Ryan Day asked Gene Smith, hey, I need $13 million. And he said, tell him. And he was at a booster event, alumni event. Let them know what it costs to be competitive.
Yeah.
That's 13. Now, 3 times that, Texas, hey, we got to win big this year. This is it. We're going all in. And so it's nuts. And it doesn't feel like it's ever gonna,
And in some ways it's great for college football in that the interest is at peak.
Yes.
It's like it's total free agency every year. So you've got peak interest from the fans. But on the other hand, a lot of fans aren't happy. They don't like this. So it's kind of a little.
But Pete Thamel from ESPN, he said this to me on my podcast last year. He said, the funny thing about it is the chaos has never been anywhere close to what it is now in college athletics, especially college football.
Yep.
Off the field.
And that's what
and on the field, the product's never been better in a lot of respects.
Yep. And I had one Ohio State person tell me that they just basically get up every day ready to confront the chaos.
Yeah.
It's
because you don't know, especially in the transfer portal, which runs from where you can get into it from the 2nd to the 16th.
Yep.
But I think you can get signed. That's when you can get into it. Everything doesn't have to be finished by the 16th,
correct.
But on the 17th, you can't now declare for the transfer portal. You can always just willy-nilly leave school and sit out a year or something. But
I think the two finalists get.
But you've got to hold your breath if you're an Ohio State or an Alabama or a Georgia or a Texas or even Indiana for that matter. They're players now. You understand what I'm saying? The big-time elite schools have to hold their breath until midnight, January 17th.
Oh, and then
who's jumped in it now?
Not only that, if a coach, and this was always made it more difficult for me.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the portals are over. It's all done. And then all of a sudden, a head coach takes another job.
Yeah.
Bang, it's open again.
Yeah.
Because those players at his school can get in it. And you may want those players.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it can be never ending.
Never ending.
Well, yeah. But at least now there's not 2 periods. You know what I mean?
Yep.
You don't have to worry about post-spring. Now, the good news is January 17th, Ohio State. Well, no, because you can still sign guys from the portal, but pretty much by the end of January, you got to figure.
Yep.
Because the guy's got to get in school by the end of January, you would think. Remember Davis and Igbinosun? I think they got him as a transfer from Ole Miss. Might have been on signing day in February of the year he came a couple of years ago. Because I remember he walked by me with an escort guy going into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center as I was walking out. And he had just been transferred from Ole Miss and stuff. So you can get into school in a late transfer kind of situation. My point is, definitely well before spring, you're going to know what your roster is. Hopefully, by then, you're going to know what your coaching roster is, right? I'm talking about of guys that could leave, et cetera. And, of course, there are several – you got to believe there are several Ohio State assistant coaches who are being courted, even as we speak, on these new staffs by these umpteen schools that changed head coaches this year, which is crazy. But you got at least it's by the end of February, you got to figure you've got a grip on who your players are, who your coaches are, et cetera, right? Which that's the only good thing about it. You don't have that spring portal now to then deal with again.
Yeah, I think that's a positive.
Yeah.
But, you talk about the coaching. There are, I think, 7 NFL vacancies right now.
Yeah.
As those get filled, does somebody want Matt Patricia to come be their defensive coordinator?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's
does somebody want Ryan Day? I mean, would somebody make Ryan Day an offer he could not refuse? See, I can't see Ryan Day leaving Ohio State, at least until his son finishes playing high school football at DeSales. You never say never to anything anymore, right? Just when you think you've seen it.
That was my motto recruiting.
Yeah.
I never say never.
Yeah. But the funny thing about it is now, I think college head coaches who might make a move up, to the NFL as previous to before, now they understand the dynamics of a roster building from a free agency standpoint and the draft, of course, but free agent. And they might, like a Mark Pantoni to me has gained more and more worth just on value because he's been at the ground floor of all of these changes that have come along over the last several years. He would know about cap space when it comes to NFL rosters, which, by the way, probably the NFL now is more stringent on contracts and cap space
no question,
than college football is, right?
Yeah.
Because they've got rules.
No doubt about it.
And if you want to be in my club, which is the NFL, you play by my rules, which is interesting. But What do you think about Pantoni and the way he has just rolled with these punches?
Oh, I think, yeah. As I've said, I don't think there's anybody better at what he does than him. And it's like it is an ever evolving situation.
Yeah.
I don't think if you would have asked Mark Pantoni 4 years ago, he would have predicted it's necessarily going to be like it is now.
Yeah.
The one prediction that I think it turned out to be true, but maybe not. Urban Meyer said it's going to take at least 5 years for all this stuff to get sorted out. That was about 5 years ago.
Sure.
And it has taken that long.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's even close to being sorted out.
Yeah. COVID was the first hammer. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden, but then that's also where the portal really came into effect also around that time. And then when you throw the NIL situation into it, another can of worms, because now it's just like the NFL in terms of me going to team A, B, C, or D. And by the way, what are you going to offer me in the final analysis and stuff? And that always has to settle out, because it's not an infinite cache, CACHE, of cash out there, even though you want to think there is, right?
It's not a bottomless pit. And that's what, I see all the time. People say, oh, we need to offer this guy this much and this guy more.
Like they're playing Monopoly.
Sooner or later, that money's going to run out.
Yeah.
It is not a bottomless cash flow.
Though the offers seem to, reading again about Alabama's Ty Simpson, excuse me, declared for the draft and now supposedly has been offered 6.5 to stay in school. And I'm not even sure that school is Bama. It may be somebody else.
Well, but by whom? That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Number one, number two.
This morning, Trinidad Chambliss, how much that NCAA ruling could cost him, because with incentives, this deal could be over $6 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
At Ole Miss.
And that's hard to even think about.
But right now, he's not even allowed to,
correct,
allowed to play for Ole Miss. So we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah. You're talking about courts.
Yeah. He's going to the state court now.
That's what he's
in
doing,
Mississippi. So he'll be eligible.
But I saw Ty Simpson play live this year when Alabama beat South Carolina out South Carolina, when they had to have a miracle comeback to do it, but they did it. And we all saw him. Is Ty Simpson a $6.5 million guy? You watch football.
If you were just wanting my opinion, I would say probably not.
Is Sorsby a $5 million guy? You saw him play at Cincinnati or watched highlights of his exploits. Is he a $5 million guy?
If somebody's willing to pay it, he is. But
I know.
I don't think I wouldn't be. That wouldn't be what I would do.
Is Ohio State going to be in a perpetual state? Well, Julian Sayin is going to come back for another year. It does appear, because he has to, or can't go to the NFL yet. But can coaches now? I mean, look at Ohio State. The run of quarterbacks over the last several years. A couple of them 1-year wonders, right? Mm-hmm. And then Julian Sayin stepping up finally. After moving over from Alabama, after being in Alabama for 3 weeks. As I like to say, if I'm a fan out there, I'm not going to be buying jerseys with names on the back of them. Right? If you're a big fan.
Yep.
Because what do you do with that jersey when that guy's playing for maybe your rival for one of another? Who knows if Auburn's made that $6.5 million offer to Ty Simpson?
That used to apply for professionals.
I know.
Don't get those jerseys with the names on. Now, like you said.
Well, I feel sorry for little fans coming up now. I mean, Joe Namath, when Joe Namath showed up, everybody knows I grew up in Alabama and in Texas. I went to Alabama home games with my dad and my older brother in the early 60s, 61 through 64. My hero was Joe Namath. In 62, he was a sophomore. He didn't get to play as a freshman. And I knew he was going to be there for 3 years, because, they didn't draft you in the NFL until you complete your eligibility, or after 5 years. And of course, that all got changed to a 3-year deal. But my point is, I knew he was going to be there, or if he left, he wasn't going to play for anybody that next year. because of transfer rules. Now you can literally, we've seen it happen. You can leave up until this year, you could have left Ohio State at the end of spring ball and be playing for your next team in late August, early September and stuff. That's what I want to get to here. How tough is this on the fans from your perspective, Bill?
Well, again, I judge a lot of this by what I see, having been with Bucknuts for our 18 years, what I see on the message boards. And overall, like I said, they're highly interested in this stuff. I mean,
we have to be.
I mean, they love seeing what's going on in the portal as long as it's working out for Ohio State.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, they don't like it generally.
Yeah.
It's just so many of them say this is not college football anymore. I don't like a new team every year. Or whatever. College basketball. I don't, So I think overall the popularity, it's kind of a double-edged sword. They like watching what's going on, but they don't always like the results.
How did you get to know guys related to the NIL? Ohio State took those fledgling steps with the NIL where they had a couple, three, and now they've kind of got for one of another term, a consortium. They've got a guy that watches over that and everything. They're allowed to do that kind of stuff. But what was your initial take on the NIL groups that developed in terms of, were they good time Charlies? How would you describe them? Who just wanted an above the table piece of the action. How would you describe NIL groups when they first got together?
Like the collectives?
Yeah, the collectives. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I think that's evolved. I think it's evolved to the point of being better. That they kind of know what they're doing a little more. Because it's been around for a while.
It's not three entities working against each other. I mean, you may be a business, you get knocked on the door by this collective, and then the next collective would come to town and knock on your door. Mm-hmm. And they're all supposedly for the betterment, let's say, of Ohio State football, right? Mm-hmm. And then Ohio State may have been wanting to knock on the same door for its athletic department funding, you know what I mean? Or programs. Solicitors use backdoor, right? I mean, and we may or may not answer it, but that'd be confusing for even the sponsors, et cetera, right?
Oh, I think it was, I was confused with some of the stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
What's this and what's that? I think it's getting less confusing, but it's
up until you retired. And I know you still keep up with stuff, but up until you retired, you can name names now in terms of what I'm going to ask you. What was the most interesting recruitment of a player who ended up at Ohio State from the standpoint of high school recruitment and, over your years? What's that one you still think back on and go, wow, that was what an exercise that was?
Well, let me start with one that didn't end up at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Because that's the one that's the top one in my mind. It was Bijan Robinson. I mean, he was, we had quotes from him, everything, why he picked Ohio State.
Yeah, ready to go.
We was ready to go. And they were, everything else. And all along that process, somebody that was pretty close to
running back, ladies and gentlemen. He was out of, where was he out of?
He was out of Arizona.
Yeah.
Went to Texas.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's turned out to be the real deal. And somebody that was close to him kept telling me, Bill, his family does not want him to go to Ohio State. They think it's too far. And they kept saying that. And they said, we got quotes. He said, Bill, they don't. And lo and behold, they won out. And I got a call at 8:00 on a Sunday morning. I had just got back from a wedding out of town the night before, so I was sleeping in a little bit. Phone rings at 8:00. So I looked at who it was from. I said, "Uh-oh, I need to answer this."
Yeah, you didn't need coffee that morning, did you?
And so I answered it, and the guy says, "Bijan Robinson's not coming to Ohio State."
Wow.
I said, "What?" He said, "He's not coming to Ohio State." So I don't know where he's going yet, but he's not coming to Ohio State. And I said, wow. Are you sure? He said, I can't be wrong on this. Are you 100% sure? Because if I put this out there, I'm the only one and I cannot be wrong with it. He said, "It is 100. He is not coming to Ohio State."
Wow.
So I put it out there, and fortunately, that was unfortunately for Ohio State, but fortunately for me that I put that. It was
That's
right,
correct.
and that was the. I mean, you talk about the crystal balls, and all those. Everybody had that kid to Ohio State.
Yeah, I remember.
And I switched my pick, and by the end of that Sunday at 7:00, everybody all across the spectrum, there was no Ohio State picks anymore.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he didn't Ohio State.
When you first put that out there, do you remember being castigated by other so-called experts or whatever? You understand what I'm saying?
I did not look at the internet for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then as I saw the day going on, I said,
other people are getting the message.
Yeah, they're getting the message.
Yeah.
But that was the converse of what you asked.
Well, no, that was good. I was going to ask you that very question. So you read my mind. I don't
have one to top.
You read my mind back to forward in there. But when you look back though at, like, for example, the recruitment of like Orlando Pace, you know what I mean? I don't know if you.
Best player I've ever seen in person.
Yeah.
In high school.
Yeah. But then past that, what was the recruitment like? Do you remember much of that? I mean, I remember covering it like it was it wasn't necessarily a daily thing because you had the sense all along he was going to end up at Ohio State. But dude, back then people don't understand. I mean, recruiting has been incredibly competitive forever.
You bringing that up brings to mind that, and you'll probably agree with this, one that did end up coming to Ohio State being really, really off the charts and difficult was Terrell Pryor.
Yeah.
Oh, my. That was
dude, I'm in a hotel over there in Jeanette, Pennsylvania, the night before signing day. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden his coach, who I got to be pretty good friends with. I mean, because you talk to him every other day, right? He
said it ain't happening.
Yeah. I mean, but he gave me a call and said his no cell phone, but it's not happening tomorrow is the main thing. Because supposedly Penn State had become a player,
right?
Which it hadn't been up until that moment. But go ahead, you tell it from your vantage point.
Well,
because what did we wait? Did we wait 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Was it?
It was.
It was deep into basketball season.
Yeah, it was at least a few weeks.
Yeah, but go ahead.
I don't want to. I'm going to switch gears too real quick. You talk about 2 or 3 weeks. Do you remember Gary Berry?
Yeah.
Columbus to Sales.
Yeah.
That was the one. Most people didn't understand in those days that signing day was not. Everybody signed on the first, as you mentioned, Clay, first Wednesday in February.
But
you had several months to sign.
Right. Yeah.
And Gary Berry could not decide where he was going to Ohio State, Notre Dame, or Michigan.
You're right.
And he played it out all the way till the very last day. It was in April, till the very last day at the end.
Jeez, I'd forgotten.
We talked about the 900 number. I had a 900 number in those days, and I had 3 separate lines: one for Ohio State, one for Notre Dame, one for Michigan.
Wait. Let me add this sound effect. Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Every day. I'm, even though we're not a lot going on, I'm putting another update on.
Of course you are. You're a businessman.
And Gary Berry made me a whole lot of money by stringing his decision out till the very last day for months, and he ended up going to Ohio State. So it all turned out great, and it all certainly turned out great for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just want to tell everybody, it was crazy even back then, man.
And the thing was, I kind of had a little in that my daughter was a softball player, bunter, slapper, you've got to be fast. And she was being trained by Elise Berry.
Yes. I met her. Yeah, I remember meeting her.
Yeah. And so I had a good situation there. But Elise Berry was a really good college athlete, and she trained kids for speed and all that.
Yeah. Who's your favorite guy you ever dealt with? I'm talking about the athlete, the player, during the recruiting process, because you dealt with, it had to be, let's say you had to be in contact. What's your estimate of number of players you had to be in contact with every recruiting cycle? Well over 100, around 100, well over 100. What would you say?
Well, Well over 100, certainly. And that increased as, when Urban Meyer came in.
Because of the national.
Yeah, from Jim Tressel, who cast, a smaller net.
Yeah.
But he was very, very effective.
Yes.
Tremendously effective. And then Urban Meyer, as you mentioned, Clay, all over the country. Yep. So as things went on, it was not only well over 100, well over one in the hundreds.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Except even with Urban Meyer, they weren't after everybody, but they were, for another term, if you had 5-star or 4-star by your name, Urban Meyer was very interested in you, right? At least from a get-go. Yep. And then they started the weaning out process.
Yeah. And also,
go ahead.
As things progress forward, schools, Ohio State and basically all the schools, started offering scholarships, quote,
early,
because those offers were not always by all schools.
Yeah.
Committable.
Yeah.
But kids want to get offers.
Yeah.
So you were, when I first started this,
that's what really changed.
Yeah. When I first started this business, you might maybe offered 50 to 100 kids. Now they're offering hundreds and hundreds of kids.
That's right.
Well, for one reason, you want to be able to look back on the timeline and go, hey, we offered you way back then.
Yeah, exactly.
We thought you were, and,
but then they started recruiting 8th graders.
Yeah. Yep.
7th graders.
Well, yeah.
Some of those.
But what I'm getting to is this: is it more defined now, or is it less defined on who Ohio State is after 2 years ahead of time of signing day? Is it, did you find have they done a pretty good process of sort of zeroing in, but still keeping their options open?
I think for the certain kids, they know, like Urban Meyer once said, all you need to do is watch 3 plays of this kid.
Yeah.
For those types of kids,
Nick Saban had kind of the same approach.
It's defined early.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of kids that it's not defined early. Every year there's a couple kids that Ohio State gets in on later because they had great senior seasons.
Yeah. Well, but you always got to have that option open.
Yeah.
You've had kids. I've had kids. They develop at different times. Even siblings do that. Really interesting. Kurt Signetti talking to reporters last week, and one of the things he pointed out about what he learned dealing with Nick Saban on Nick Saban's staff was, Nick Saban was famous for he would not recruit pretty much anybody who was splay-footed, meaning duck-footed. And I said, well, that means he wouldn't have recruited Keith Byers, for example. Yeah. But it's funny. You've got to kind of fit what they're looking for from an athletic standpoint, and then from a football playing standpoint, and then from an academic standpoint, right? And then from a good citizen standpoint, because as much as like even Ohio State talks about the great people they bring in, well, they're not bringing in guys who were in the choir and 3rd string on the football team. Mm-hmm. It's the flip side of that, maybe. But is it, as much as you covered this, is it, Mark Pantoni got into the business because he wanted to know, how do you build a football team? He was intrigued by the dynamics of building a football roster. Mm-hmm. You, the same way, you covered it from the outside in. Is it intriguing to you how they zero in on guys?
Yeah. And, for me, it was I just always wanted to know what's next.
Yeah.
So that's why recruiting, that's what's coming next was always interesting for me. So I looked at it as, and that's one of the things I guess that is bothers me a little bit about today's day and age is that development and kids getting to school, being developed, staying there. I'm not sure how many kids nowadays at a school like Ohio State or Alabama or Oregon are going to be there 4 years.
Long enough to learn the school song.
Get developed and then turn into a player for that school.
Yes. That's going to be the rare breed.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Ohio State.
Really is.
I mean, the last several classes, it's kind of been like
that. Unless you play, unless you play your first or second year, you're probably not going to be back for that 3rd year.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Caden Curry is a great example to me. That guy was a big-time player coming out of Indiana. Waited his turn. Oh, yeah, now you got to wait another year. You know what I mean? He finally got his moment. Kenyatta Jackson, kind of the similar thing. We're just talking about defensive ends. Yeah. So what do you now at this age, except for paying them maybe a little more money to keep them still happy? What is the allure? Is it how long can the allure be? You're at Ohio State.
Well, I think one thing for Ohio State is if you go from, if you're there 3 or 4 years and you get on the field and become a starter, you're probably going to have a shot at playing in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the allures of Ohio State.
Yeah. But how much is school pride? Because, you hear these guys talk about felt like home to me, recruiting visits. I get so tired of hearing that, but I guess it did feel like home. But meanwhile, this guy says it feels like home somewhere else. Didn't feel like home as much at Ohio State. We saw a Michigan player make that kind of comment, this year before the game. And you're going, what? But you're the one guy they treated badly, on your recruiting visit, But what I'm getting to here is, before we wrap this up, it's finally going to come down to opportunity and money. I mean, it's already there. Do you think it's already there?
Yeah.
How much can you pay me, and how much can you play me?
Yeah.
There's a good line for you. You might want to use that.
Go. Yep. Yeah. I think Ohio State's, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, they've lost a lot of kids, but really not anybody that was a starter, for instance, from this past season.
Yeah.
That I can think of right offhand.
Yeah.
These kids that are leaving are going to leave, and they're probably going to become starters.
Yeah.
At their new school, or at least play significant roles.
Yeah, most of them.
Most of them will.
Yeah.
And you always had that thing here. If you keep your nose clean and you play and you don't get to the league, you're taken care of in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, that's true.
And you have a tremendous
Mm.
life. And I found that out the first 2-3 years I'm here, of kids like that. The other thing, just quickie, would Urban have passed on James Laurinaitis, 3-star from Minnesota, who ended up being one of the few 3-time All-Americans?
Urban did take some 3-star kids.
Yeah. But he also recruited some. I mean, he and Pantone, they recognized some guys that other people, I'm drawing a blank right now, but I know there's many of them that they recruited that you're kind of going, wait a minute, why are they going after that guy? Because Bill Kurelic doesn't have him in his top 100. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what I mean? They did do some surprising things.
But Urban would brag about development. We don't just sign 5-stars.
Well, yeah.
And
I don't want to coach average.
Right. Loved it.
No answer. I mean, so it's still a subjective thing. Recruiting is
it's an inexact
from school
science.
to school. Right.
When I first started in this business 40 years ago, I remember talking. That was the term, inexact science.
Yeah.
And it still is.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that hasn't changed.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Back when you were calling me, trying to get me to quote you, not quote you, just use you. I mean, because finally when I did, boy, did your career take off. I saw no money from that, though. What intrigued, like I said, Mark Pantone said he was going to be a doctor, but he was, I think it was a doctor.
Yep.
He's really smart. The point about Mark Pantone is he's extremely smart. And number two, he can juggle like nobody's business. Has all kinds of balls and bowling pins or whatever in the air all the time. Chainsaws now, probably hatchets. And so he can have a million thoughts going on at once and compartmentalize and go into whatever he has to do. But he was, like I said, he was intrigued on how do you, I've always been intrigued at that. I'm not intrigued as much about how Ohio State puts together a football roster as I am, how does Vanderbilt how did Northwestern put together, quote, credible football rosters?
Now it's Indiana.
And that's Indiana.
This?
Yeah. Kurt Cignetti has done two things. Number one, he clearly had a plan in mind, and he clearly sold Indiana president, athletic director on that plan. Thank goodness they understood. They could look, like I said, they could Google him and see what he had done, much like Jim Tressel did when he came to Ohio State. If you really did your homework, hey, this guy, it's not just the players, it's the program that they have, But then Kurt Cignetti's also done this to college football. there's no excuse for anybody, any head coach anymore to go, well, if we just had this facility and if we just had this money and if we just had this assistant coach and if we just had this coveted quarterback, why would anybody be going to Indiana 2 years ago? You know, I mean, they've always had decent teams off and on, right? When Kevin Wilson was there and all these guys were there, Bill Mallory was there. But now there's no excuse for anybody, thanks to what Kurt Cignetti and Clark Lee has done at Vanderbilt for being sitting there for 4 years in a rebuilding mode. There's no excuse for you because these guys have proven they can do it. Do you see that as being, I think it's already started, the next orogeny is what you call it. Orogeny is, you know, the tectonic plates moving and stuff and mountains being built and all this, and valleys being dug. Do you see that as the next big thing is the firing of coaches more and more? It was pretty big this year, but do you see coaching staffs being changed wholesale after 2 or 3 years of this not working? Forget about patience anymore.
Yeah, I think
because there's a lot of money involved.
Yeah, what Cignetti's done is going to push that along. And on the other side of that, I don't think there's a lot of Cignettis out there, to be honest.
Correct.
I don't think there's a lot of guys that can do that.
Yeah. And here's the thing, though, John Cooper, you say, you know, there's more good football coaches than there are good football programs. I don't know if you ever heard him say that. And I agreed with him to a certain extent. But then his big line too was, if you want to know about a football program, whether it can win or not, get the press guide, which they don't print anymore, I don't guess. But get the press guide, look in the back. See how many games they won, see how many championships they've won. Alabama, all through the years, through the decades, has won national, championships and won a lot of games. They've had some down years. Ohio State, of course, has had, no one's been better at football since 1968, really, than Ohio State in terms
Nobody's been better at hiring
with just blips. I mean, you know what I mean? Down blips. There have been down blips, but not down periods where, they're at 500 or worse, and more than maybe in our school. But then now Kirk Cignetti and the transfer portal and NIL have flipped that on its ear, right?
And that's with the portal. That if it wasn't for the portal, it'd be a whole lot harder. And I'm not saying Cignetti couldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But he got a lot of players from his old school, and now he's getting them from other schools.
Now you're observing it from afar, and you were observing fairly closely until November when you decided to retire. By the way, you're sitting right here talking to two guys who've retired. So at this show, this will be your future. What's Cignetti's, if he has a magic formula, what is his magic formula?
I think one thing is staff is, he's brought those guys with it. That has been huge.
Yeah.
And they're good.
And they've stuck around.
Good coaches.
Yeah. And they've stuck around.
And they're not leaving. And why would you?
Yeah. Now, wait a minute. That goes in stark contrast to Nick Saban. He's run. It's like a grist mill down there when he was down there. There was a new offensive coordinator every 2 or 3 years, or if not every year, and stuff. So why do you think these guys are sticking with Cignetti? I mean, what is that? Is it like a club? I mean, how would you describe it?
Well, I think they're very comfortable with him, and to be honest, I think they're getting paid well. I mean, I think I saw one of their coaches was it $3 million?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
He deserves it,
that's
man.
A lot. He does deserve it. That's a lot of money.
You watch the way they're playing. Yeah. But then now they're getting big time interest from big time players.
Yep.
That's always, you got to get over that hump, right?
And he brought, I think also evaluation.
Yes.
I mean, they've got 2 kids on that roster that are Ohioans.
Yes.
And one in particular, their left tackle.
Yes.
Carter Smith.
Yeah.
He might be a first-round draft choice.
Yeah. Where's he from?
He's from Ohio.
Exactly.
And he was a kid that they just evaluated very, very well.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to put Ohio State down. Ohio State didn't offer him a scholarship.
I know.
And most other big schools didn't either. And that one doesn't go to Cignetti. He wasn't even there when whoever evaluated him did a really good job.
Right. But Cignetti kept him around, you know what I mean?
Cignetti kept him around, and they developed him into a potential. And he hasn't declared for the draft yet.
Right.
But if he does, he's going to be either a late first rounder or early second rounder.
So before we finish, I wanted to ask you this one. I wanted to lead up and ask you this question. What do you think? What do you, in final analysis, having covered this for 40-something years, having done this for 40-something years, what do you think they are looking for? What do you think college football coaches are looking for most when they look at a player? What is that one trait you have to have? You understand what I'm saying? For an Ohio State or an Alabama or now an Indiana or a Michigan, Notre Dame, I could name the whole schmeal, but I won't. What is it you have to have going for you that sets you apart?
Well, I don't know.
Because, you can be looking at a guy playing against Division V schools in Ohio, right? Or you could be in Texas looking at a guy not playing against 6A Division I, because they have two divisions, even in 6A or 5A. He might be down at 2A or 3A playing against, for the most part, most of the time, little guys, inferior opponents and stuff. So what is it you think, from your vantage point, that they have to have more than anything else?
I don't know that I think that somewhat that varies by position too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But
a quarterback as opposed to an offensive tackle, two totally different things.
Yeah. Doesn't it always come back? I'm gonna show my answer. It always comes down to your feet, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that's really.
In other words, not how quick you can move them, and how fast you can run. Yeah. Go ahead, though.
But again, feet are important for a quarterback and an offensive tackle both. So, that would certainly apply.
And a wide receiver.
That's, I guess I would say just athleticism.
Yeah. I know. See, but that sounds too simple, right? Because there's a lot of guys that can be really good athletes. But then, I remember doing a story about this many years ago. I remember Brian Hartline had a good answer. But I was asking football players on the Ohio State roster, then it was like 10 or 15 years ago. Do you remember the first time you went off the high board at the community pool? Because I think you can identify. I saw that with my two sons. One went off the high board when he was 5 years old, and my other son was 8. He'd never gone off the high board, and next thing you know, he's up there jumping off, But some kids just naturally go off the high board, meaning they play with a pell-mell sort of like approach to things. Dive in there first, ask questions later. Was that, right. Was it ready, shoot, aim? You know what I mean? Ready, fire, aim. But football players are different, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? I mean, there are a lot of guys that can run fast, but that doesn't mean they want to play football.
Yeah.
You talking about swag?
But how do you judge that?
Competitive excellence that Urban always talks
about.
No,
I'm talking about a lot of guys don't necessarily have swag about them, but they will go run through the wall.
Yeah.
And how do they figure that out in recruiting? That's why going to the transfer portal is more and more going to be the way to go, because we've seen offensive linemen, for example, who look like they should be the next guy, right? Mm-hmm. But boy, now that they're blocking guys about their same size, they're not that guy. But you don't see that for
even Ohio State brought in Anianwa.
Yeah, that was I was leading up to this example.
That didn't turn out the way everyone hoped it did.
But Philip Daniels did.
At least not yet.
Yeah.
But you talk about in high school, the smaller competition and all that. Well, Anianwa was going against lesser competition
at Rice,
even at the college level.
Yeah,
it kind of factors in.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm leading up to. That's what
he was at Rice.
He was at Rice.
That to me is a great example of hit or miss. Philip Daniels started at right tackle, I think every game. I think he was banged up maybe once. And Anianwa, who boy, if he walked in the store right now. Well, he have to duck. Well, he might have to duck.
He might not get in.
And he'd have to go in sideways, too.
Yes, you have to go in sideways or at least turn his shoulders. That's the other big deal. He doesn't have to turn his gut. He has to turn his shoulders. That's a great example of the portal. Mm-hmm. You think you know what you're going to be getting in the portal. I think it's going to be as risky building your team through the portal. Not maybe 100, not maybe from a 50% standpoint. You're still going to have to be developing guys along the way. Do you agree with that before we finish here? I'm talking about high school players. You got to get some guys, right?
The older they are, generally speaking, the younger they are, the more you have to project and the more difficult it is.
Yes.
Projecting an 8th grade offensive lineman, a 9th grader, it's hard. But even as you go on, there's no sure things. The NFL draft is far from sure things.
Oh, yeah, quarterback.
And so I think that it gets harder or it gets easier to evaluate. It's better to wait longer, but it's never a sure thing.
Yeah.
It's never anything but an inexact science. Still.
Yeah, and everybody's going to find that out. You know what I mean? I swear, I think Kurt Cignetti and his group. See, the problem is the cat's out of the bag now with Indiana. Now, if they're showing interest in a guy, just like in recruiting, if they're showing interest in if Alabama and Ohio State are showing interest in a guy, then everybody else is going to be at that same door, right? Yep. It's going to be the same thing in the transfer portal. If Indiana, for example, how long can you hang on to this secret? You know what I mean? This secret sauce you've got that more and more people are tasting and getting a sour taste. They go, we got to get some of that, not what we got. I think that's going to be the next step. Everything's an evolution. Last thing, if you had a magic wand, Bill Kurelic, and you wanted to bring some order to the chaos that is going on off the field in major college football right now, what would it be? Give me one thing you would change, not 10, not 3. One thing that you would tap and go, this shall now be the rule henceforth.
That one's pretty easy for me. Whatever number you want to pick, and but you cannot transfer every year. You don't have unlimited transfers.
Thank you.
Whether you say, all right, you get 1 transfer or 2, it cannot be unlimited. We can't have open free agency for every single kid every single year.
Now, let me ask you this. If you're the team that kid transferred to, and he's not as good as you, he's not the competitor you thought he would be, why didn't I see that from the school where he transferred from? If he's not competitor, he's not the football player, he's not the acumen guy we thought he would be. What's your obligation then?
2 things. First of all, I'd say, well,
tough luck.
You evaluated him and you thought he was, so you have to got to live with your decision. Choice. And second of all, maybe you make it. You get 2 transfers.
Yeah,
maybe. As I said, if it's 1 or 2, it better not be more than 2.
Yeah. Now, I keep saying the word contract has got to come into the vernacular eventually with major college sports, especially football, because that gives you control. I mean, I'm talking about with collective bargaining for the players also, from the collective bargaining agreement. There will be certain rules set in place, but that gives the school and you, like you said, 1 transfer, for example, if you want to do that, but that gives the school control over you, and to a certain extent gives you a little bit of control in the mix. But do you see 5, 8, 10 years from now of players getting cut by major college schools so they can make room on their roster for another player they think is better than you?
I think to some extent that's already happened.
I'm talking about officially, not. Of course, it's happened forever. You're not going to play your kid.
But nowadays, if you don't want that kid around, you want to cut him or whatever, you just cut his salary.
Yeah. That's kind of explains some of the things that are going on probably at Ohio State as we speak right now. Is people went knocking on Pantoni's door or whomever's door, thinking they deserve a raise. And here's the reason from the revenue sharing thing. And here's the reason why, because this school says I'm better than this, or whatever the reasons are. And Ohio State eventually, with a finite amount of money involved, has to go, well, no, we don't see it that way. We saw it happen last year, definitely to a couple of guys. Seeing it happen right now, we don't see it that way. Sorry. And so good luck to you, right? And it's happening as we speak, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely, no doubt.
Well, there's Bill Kurelic with a magic wand. He just tapped it, and then we immediately shot holes in it, because we all know that's what you do in major college sports, right? Right, Clay?
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate you. Thank you. Great discussion.
Bill, thanks for joining us, my man, here on the Tim May Show. And for Clay All and for Bill Kurelic, I'm Tim May. We'll see you next time. Shh. By the way, Clay has left the room. I wanted to let you folks in on a real bargain out there in the world of simulator golf. the Back Nine Golf, which is located at 2820 Fishinger Road in Upper Arlington, has a hell of a holiday box available to you right now. The value is nearly $300, but your price is $150 if you jump online. That's almost 50% off if you jump online at Columbus at theback9golf.com. That's their email address. Their website is theback9golf.com/Columbus-upper-Arlington-OH/ That's a long address, but just write it down a couple times watching it. And you can also call them at 614-362-7888, parentheses, PUTT, PUTT. But the bottom line is one of the new ultra modern simulators that you can find in the greater Columbus area. And it's really right there in the middle of Upper Arlington. I know Tito Thidoff and I hopped in there the other day. I think it was 16 degrees outside. There was snow and ice everywhere, and we played Pebble Beach. And we did it in less than an hour. So it's one of the great bargains going out there. And with this holiday box, you get 1 month of Birdie membership. You get Back Nine branded golf balls. You get cozy Back Nine beanie, and you get premium Back Nine towel. So that's a hell of a deal because basically it's unlimited golf. It's 24/7. You get a code to get you in the door, and then you can go from there. And it's definitely fun. It's the premises are pristine. I know we had a great time. We even played closest to the hole, a few shots on number 7, famed number 7 short par 3 at Pebble Beach the other day, and had a great time doing it. So if you're looking for that last minute gift for a golfer that you love, or yourself that you love, that you're a golfer, nothing wrong with giving yourself a gift at this time of the year. That's the Back Nine Golf holiday box, and it's only a limited time, and as you can imagine, there are only a few available. Quantities are tight, so check in at theback9golf.com.